conversation with the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. Well, he's here, Mr. Samuel Abu Jinapor. He's no stranger to our show. It's nice to have you back, sir.
Thank you. It's very good to be here, and thank you for having me. And good morning to your cherished listeners and viewers. These days, both listeners and viewers.
It's true.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you. And we've got lots to talk about. Lots been going on in your ministry. Just yesterday, Appiatse community, the rebuilt Appiatse community phase 1 was launched. You were there with the vice president for that. We certainly want to learn more about that, as well as all the other things going on in your ministry. So we've got a big conversation ahead of us. Why don't we get started? I mean, yesterday we saw the pictures, the images from Appiatse. Phase 1 successfully launched. There were a few members of the community who were worried about full completion of the project. They were talking about access to water and so forth. Have all those issues been resolved?
Well, they've all been resolved. Kojo, thank you very much. As you know, the tragic event which took place on 20th of January 2022 in Apeatse was one that shook the country, and not just the country. I think it caught even international attention. Al Jazeera, BBC, and the rest all reported on it. So it's a major catastrophe which we never anticipated, and that called for some very important actions. And I think the government took 3 major interventions. The first one was to bring immediate relief to the people of Apiatse, the victims. As you know, we lost some lives, about 16 or so lives, and we continue to express our condolences to the family. And so the president sent the vice president to Apiatse. I went with him to assess the situation and the usual and relief items, not more this, that. But once that was done, you then had to take some certain steps. The second important intervention we had to take was to ensure that the entire health and safety protocols or framework of the mining sector was fit for purpose, which is why I continue to be very grateful to Professor Richard Amankwa, the Vice Chancellor of the George Grant University of Mines, who was gracious enough to spend quality expert time and expertise to chair a committee to dig into the entire health and safety protocols of the mining sector. And I should say, by and large, so far so good. I mean, what he did is proven to be very useful. He brought a very comprehensive report, which the Minerals Commission and the ministry has been implementing up to date. So that was the second intervention. The third one was how to resettle the victims. And initially what we did was that we liaised with the Catholic Church, and they gave us a hall where we put them, we housed them temporarily. And then we erected tents with NADMO. And of course, if you know the climate of that place, it rains heavily. Even yesterday it rained. So once the rains were setting in, we needed to get them some permanent temporary accommodation. And then we had to liaise with FGR, Future Global Resources, which is a large-scale mining company in that area. And they had some uncompleted buildings, which we refurbished and then housed the victims there. Then the big question came up, how to build this community, how to rebuild this community. Of course, a lot of questions will arise. Where do you get the money from? What technology do you use? What model do you use? How do you go about it? And so I took the view that we should set up an implementation committee. And we did constitute an implementation committee, which had membership from across the spectrum, LUSPA, AESL, the Architects Association of Ghana, and then my deputy minister then, Benito Usubio, who himself is a surveyor, a professional surveyor, to chair it. And we had a committee, the implementation committee. Then you then have the issue of the money. Where do you get the money from? I call on Auntie Joyce, the very respected senior stateswoman, Dr. Joyce Ayi. Initially, she felt that, given her stage in life, how was she going to run around? I said, please, I need your help. I need you. I need somebody of clout, of stature. When people are bringing their money, they are certain that they are giving their money to somebody for safekeeping and who will spend their money properly. So she agreed to do it. And look, I mean, within days, weeks, months, people trooped in to donate, and we raised sufficient funds to be able to deal with this matter. And I took the view that government or the ministry should have nothing to do with the expenditure. Excuse me. In other words, we were not to be the spending office. We were not to get involved whatsoever. in any penny which will be spent on the reconstruction of this building. Auntie Joy is also was extremely scrupulous. She got KPMG as their consultant, and KPMG developed a financial model how they were going to go about spending the money. And at every point in time, there was auditing, vetting, and the rest. And here we are. We've built 124 housing units, ranging from 1 bedroom to 7 bedrooms. First class. You should go and see it. First class. Roads are first class. Sanitary facilities, first class. The water harvesting system is one that has been done in a manner that is sustainable. So because the place is a rain, heavy rain enclave, and therefore the water harvesting system has been done in a manner that is sustainable, and is green concept. Everything about the community is green and is sustainable, because the president actually charged that, President Akufo-Addo charged us to try and build this as some sort of a model Ghanaian rural community. And I mean, in all humility, I feel so proud that we've been able to deliver this.
Forgive me. So what I was originally asking about was the water issue. Was there a water issue that got resolved?
So far as I'm concerned, it should not be a water issue.
So they do have access to water?
Yeah, they should have access to water, because we work closely with the Ministry of Water Resources, and water, electricity, street lights, roads, sanitation, market, first-class school, playground, landscape, literally everything you can think about in a township, you'll find it there.
Okay.
And in fact, I mean, this is phase 1, and phase 1 is really more or less, we've built the Apeatse community to a point where everybody who live there will have accommodation. So this is standard. Everybody, I mean, the lawyers will say restitution. We are restoring them as much as possible to their original state, or even better. So we counted the houses that got destroyed, the inhabitants, and as it is today, when they are relocated, everybody, if you had a 1 bedroom, you have a 1 bedroom. If you had a 2 bedroom, you have a 2 bedroom. If you have a 7 bedroom, you have a 7 bedroom. Now, there were other buildings which were destroyed partially. We sat down with them, we negotiated. They said, no, don't build, don't repair for us. Give us money, we will repair our homes ourselves. We got professionals to do the valuation. They've since been paid. Phase 3 is coming up, because when the plan was drawn up, to make the community bigger, the township bigger. So these additional houses are going to be houses that, if you want,
others can
come in. I mean, it's not going to be people who used to live in Appiatse and who got displaced who are going to have these houses. I mean, we're having a bigger township.
So the bigger township, is there a demand for it? I mean, what is going to drive people to this community? Have we done all that, all those analysis?
Well, they've done all those analysis, and I think the point is that if you know the place, the Appiatse is in 2 parts. You have one side of it on this side of the road, which is what has been built, and which is what existed originally. We're now having the third phase, which is going to be on the other side across the road. And my understanding is that that part of the development is going to have a lot more of local economic infrastructure, if you want. So, like a rural factory or something, gari making, processing, structure, tie and dye sort of thing, and so that the people who will come and be involved in this can also be housed, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
So how much did we spend on phase 1? Do we have enough money to carry out the other phases?
Well, I anticipated this question. Well, first of all, I am not a spending officer. First of all, I didn't raise the money. I'm not a spending officer. I think in due course, Auntie Joyce and Co will come out and publish their accounts and inform the country how much was raised. But I think some, I don't know, an amount, I don't want to speculate, but considerable amount of money in terms of the contribution, almost about 100 million cedis, I think. And also remember that in the process, we did impose an administrative fine on the company at the center of this explosion, Hagsam Company Limited. I believe you recall that. We imposed a fine of, I think, $6 million $6 million, yes. And the president directed that 5 million of that money should be donated or contributed to the Apeatse Reconstruction Fund. So that money too is available.
Oh,
Then-
so the fine has been paid.
Oh, fully.
But are we prosecuting anybody?
Well, we didn't have that advice, no. That particular chapter is closed, and that's why I say it's an administrative fine. And the second question, which is that, do we have sufficient money? Do we need more money? Yes, we do need more money. I think the fund still needs more money, and so people can contribute. And some companies did made some interventions which I think were remarkable. So I wish I had a list here. I mean, I don't know if Cletus can help me, which is that there were companies which stepped forward and said, look, we are not going to contribute money. We'll build a hospital, a clinic for the community. And they did that. Some people say we'll build a market. And if I get a list, I'd like to mention
let me
the
just
names of the
ask you,
companies.
now, the original design, okay, first of all, who approved that design, and the original design, how much was it going to cost us to rebuild the community?
Well, see, the design was put together by very respected Ghanaian architects under the auspices of AESL, the government agency responsible for architectural drawings. And I, as I was explaining to you, I think the concept was really driven by more of green technology, climate, and the rest. You will see. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but you will see that they use bricks.
Yes, this one, it's just behind us.
Exactly.
Yes.
They use bricks. So there was nothing like painting,
Yes,
and
but-
then they used the roofing was also such that you wouldn't need much air conditioning. You wouldn't need air conditioning at all. I mean, you wouldn't need any cooling facilities or any cooling intervention. I mean, the roofing is been done in a way that will cool the room and all that. How much was to cost to build the original?
Yes.
I have to check that out, but I don't have the exact figure here.
But
I have to
the
check that.
committee ran these figures by, you saw it.
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I mean, a lot of it was run purely, almost 99%, by the fund, Dr. Joyce Aye's fund. I was very deliberate about it. There's no concept of anything having to go through chief director or director of finance or minister. Strictly, they raise the money, they spend. And she's been thoroughly scrupulous.
You didn't have anything to do, the ministry didn't have anything to do with it.
The spending.
I mean,
Or even the budgeting.
as in evaluation of anything that went, everything was done by them, solely by them, and that's the end of it.
No, the ministry was very much involved in the planning of the project in terms of the drawings, as well as in terms of the execution. As I said to you, I set up the implementation team, and therefore everything to do with the implementation, the Benito Usubio committee, I was actively involved. I must have visited Apiatse for almost 10, 15 times, and they must have visited there almost 20, 30 times. I mean, implemented. But the point I'm making is that when it came to money, I insisted that the fund, chaired by Dr. Joyce Aye, should have ultimate and sole responsibility. And they did so, working closely with KPMG. And I did that for good reason, because I needed that this way. I'd always remember, not a penny of a taxpayer's money has been used in building this community, not one peso. And I felt that if people had contributed their money for this noble, godly cause, we should, as much as possible, make sure that there is absolute accountability and transparency.
Although, to be fair, the fine is public funds, isn't it?
Well, you can say so.
So there should be some public accountability.
Why not?
Someone should be keeping an eye on.
Why
the
not?
numbers.
Why not? And that will happen.
Okay,
That
because
will definitely happen.
What we were even trying to find out was where we started from. What was the budget we started from? How did we cost this whole project before the fundraising began? What was their target? Would that not be something that the ministry was dialed
Check
in
that
on?
out for me.
Okay, we'll get
I
that
should get that
information.
for you.
Yes, we'll get that
No, it
information.
shouldn't be a problem at all.
Okay, so everyone has moved in after the launch, or will that happen at a later date?
I think there will be a process. I mean, the assembly the district assembly and the project committee will take it up and make sure that people. But I expect that they should begin to move in from today. That's
Right.
my expectation,
Right.
and I intend to follow up on that today.
And the properties have been pre-allocated. Everyone knows where they are moving in already.
Very much so. You should take a visit. It's awesome. Trust me. It's awesome. It's beautiful. It's well done. And it's extraordinary, actually.
How are the people responding? I mean, yesterday you met some of them, no doubt.
Well, I think by and large they are excited about it. But look, let's face it. I mean, what they went through, there's no amount of intervention which will, if you want, compensate them or assuage their loss and pain fully. Because it's not just buildings and the rest, which, I mean, I think the next thing that I'm thinking about, which we have to try and work out, is how to help them with their livelihoods, how to help them start economic activity. Because you put them in these houses, it's all well and good. But what will they do? I mean, what work will they be involved in? They are generally farmers and so on and so forth. But we still have to find a way of cushioning them and helping them out. They've been through such traumatic times, and this, as I said yesterday, and as Vice President Bawumia said yesterday, is really a gesture of a caring government to more or less alleviate the pain and the suffering, but it cannot be conclusive. There's still a lot more work to be done.
All right, we're talking to Mr. Samuel Abu Jinapor. He, of course, is the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. He stopped by to have a chat with us today about lots of things going on in his ministry. Now, am I right in saying that perhaps the biggest or most publicly, the part of your job that has drawn the most public attention is the fight against Galamsey?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How's that going from where you sit?
More than Atlantic Lithium or Achimota Forest?
Well, I mean, you tell us. We'll get to all of those. Yeah, we'll get to all of those. But I'm curious.
Don't mind me.
Yeah, I'm happy to be corrected. Is that not perhaps the part of your job that...
You know, every now and again, when I've been through all these storms and the rest, the president will laugh at me. And then he say, when he tried to organize my ministerial career, he threw me into the deepest end of the water. You have a good laugh.
Yeah.
Yes, Galamsey is really, you're right, is the most talked about, and rightly so, because it deals with our very existence, our very survival. We're talking about the river bodies of our country and the forest estate of our country and the landscape of our country. But could you, I think it's important that we situate the matter of Galamsey in its right context. The matter we're dealing with relates to gold, as you know, and therefore people are dealing with money. And when it comes to money, it's almost like the drug cartels. People will stop at nothing, and they will do anything and everything to get at it. I try to be modest when I'm responding to these matters, these questions as to where are we with the fight against Galamsey. Firstly, the effort is relentless. We're still on it, and we're taking all measures to ensure that we come to grips with the issue of illegal small-scale mining. That is number one. Number two, I know your listeners and viewers may disagree with me, and some people may disagree with me, and they're entitled to do so, and I respect that. I think the situation we find ourselves today, you know, the culture of impunity, we've by and large been able to get a little handle on the culture of impunity, which is where people could just evade our forest reserves and just mine indiscriminately, where you had champagnes, thousands of champagnes on river bodies, mining the riverbed, and where people were just mining even in villages and the rest. Well, you will still have one or two as I speak. I'm sure somebody will take a picture of champagne on a river body, or will be aware of an illegal mining in a particular forest reserve, or a mining activity taking place somewhere, and take a picture and say, Mr. Minister, you are wrong, come and look at this. But I'm telling you, all the reports I have, both orthodox and unorthodox, and all the intelligence we have suggests that there is some sanity when it comes to that. Thirdly, we've made a very strenuous effort to cordon off the forest reserves of our country. And the 268 or so forest reserves of Ghana, the task we gave to the Forestry Commission, in some cases, they work in conjunction with the Ghana Armed Forces. It's generally just cordon off the forests, just barricade the forest reserves of our country and ensure that people do not invade our forest reserves and get involved in illegal small scale. I think by and large, I'm reasonably satisfied with that effort. And every now and again, they get into the forest reserve when people find their way into the forest, then they flush them out, and they are very, very, very draconian when it comes to the enforcement of the forest resources laws of our country. So yes, I mean, let me just summarize in terms of the response I'll give to you when it comes to illegal small-scale mining. Look, the history is there. It's a long-standing issue. The regulatory regime which got broke down, the culture of impunity which got ushered in, where people just mined indiscriminately wherever they found themselves. All of those things, we've largely been able to take care of them. Yesterday, I was in a community called Himan and Cobra in the Pristia Huni Valley before we went to commission Appiatse, where I commissioned a community mining, an underground community mining scheme for that community, which is supposed to employ some 2,000-3,000 youth in that area. And we are rolling out and commissioning hundreds of community mining schemes, which is actually the way to go. Cordon of the forest reserves of our country, the river bodies of our country are largely being patrolled. We are not out of the woods yet. We still have a lot of problems. There's still a lot of work to do. But by and large, we are keeping our eye on this matter and we are remaining relentless.
You described the problem as a sort of cartel-like problem. And I know there are many people who will agree with you on that. But I also know that those people will suggest that in some ways, the actions of government officials lend credence to the belief that they are part of the cartel, if not the ones running it. An example would be the Akonta mining situation. You know, JoyNews, through Erastus Asaridonko, provided evidence in documentary after documentary of Akonta mining's activities in forest reserves, which your ministry had already flagged as, you know, unlawful. Once these documentaries were out there, your ministry said that the Forestry Commission would investigate Akonta mining. That was some time ago. The only action we saw from the Forestry Commission was that they went to the site where the crime is supposed to have happened and burnt everything. What's happening there? What's the status of this Forestry Commission investigation after over a year since it was announced?
Oh, I'm quite surprised that you've not been brought up to speed on the outcome of the investigation. The Forestry Commission concluded their investigations and brought a report, which report I acted on, and sent the report to the Minister for Interior for onward transmission to the Inspector General of Police for investigations to be conducted to ascertain whether or not there is any criminal culpability. You should always remember that the Forestry Commission does not have prosecutorial powers, neither do they have criminal investigative powers.
So what were they investigating?
They had to investigate the matters to do with the regulations relating to the forest estate of our country, and whether or not an activity in the forest reserve was lawful or unlawful.
But you had
as you know,
you had already written letters to Akonta mining,
even if you went to
telling them to stop their unlawful activity in the forest reserve.
Even if you went to the
so what was the need for a further investigation?
Even if you went to a forest reserve to harvest snails, you need a forest entry permit. That's the nature of the laws of our country. Whatever activity, even if you went to fetch firewood, you needed permission from the Forestry Commission when it comes to forest reserves. So they needed to satisfy themselves. I think the company Akonta Mining itself had taken the view that they had a prospecting license and they were mobilizing in anticipation of getting a mining lease and a forest entry permit. But the Forestry Commission took the view that prospecting license without a forest entry permit will not warrant you entering into a forest reserve, which is the example, the pedestrian example I've given about snail and firewood, and therefore they flushed them out of the place. So that's the report I had. I sent the report to the Inspector General, the Interior Minister, for onward submission to the Inspector General of Police, which is the body that will investigate a matter which portends or possibly may result in criminal culpability.
So to clarify, the Forestry Commission's investigation was to determine whether Achimota mining had entered the forest reserve.
Yeah, was to establish the circumstances.
Right.
The circumstances of to establish or to investigate the reports which had been made, the allegations which had
But
been
your
made.
ministry had already written to Achimota Mining even before JoyNews went there to tell them to stop mining in your forest reserve. So you already knew that they were there. What was the need for an investigation and a report to determine something you already knew?
I came here with my counsel, and he is normally at the center of all of this. He's shaking his head. I don't know why he's shaking his head, but anyway, whatever it is, bottom line is I will repeat, and I don't need to refresh my memory or my notes or my files to be able to say this. Me as minister, if I wanted to enter Moli Forest Reserve, I need permission of the Forestry Commission. I've received foreign guests who wanted to do one or two things in our forest reserves. We needed to write to the Forestry Commission for a forest entry permit, and therefore, if there are the allegations that a particular company is mobilized equipment into a particular forest reserve, the Forestry Commission will have to satisfy itself the circumstances under which these equipment existed, or these equipment were mobilized into that particular forest reserve. But that is the work the Forestry Commission did.
Right.
And the Forestry Commission came to the conclusion that those equipment ought not to be there. And they were demobilized, and a report was sent to the police.
So why did they burn the structures at the
You mean,
mining site?
why did they demobilize the structures?
They burnt the structures, yes.
That had been our policy then. That had been our policy. That had been our approach. That approach is now been tinkered with a bit. It's been tweaked a little bit.
Because after burning it, now that you are calling the IGP to investigate, what is there for him to investigate? Since you've burnt the evidence.
Why don't you leave it to the IGP?
Okay.
And talking about the efforts, Honorable Abu Jinapor, you say today you don't have sham funds, but the unavailability of sham funds on the river doesn't take away the fact that today the rivers are polluted than they were. So?
Well, first of all, your observation about the unavailability of sham funds, meaning that the rivers are more polluted than they were. I think we should be a little careful in drawing those conclusions. You see, when it comes to the matters of river bodies, turbidity, their state of cleanliness and all of that, it's an expert area. And on a fortnightly basis, the Water Resources Commission do test the turbidity levels or the purity levels of the river bodies of our country, and so it's scientific, and so it's a question of scientific conclusion which determines whether or not a river body is more polluted now than ever. And people tend to use the color of the river body. I mean, I've been properly or appropriately advised by the experts that, even if you stopped all mining activities on our river bodies today, it will probably take you a decade or more for the river bodies to organically or naturally restore themselves, unless where you are minded to introduce chemical purifications, which is not advised. So I think we should hasten slowly.
So let me just give you, since you talked about the experts. So for instance, this is a story that was published on the 23rd of March 2024. And in that story, for instance, I'm sure you know of the Sechehima water treatment plant on the Prairie River, which uses water from the Prairie River. Mm-hmm. Now, they talk about the fact, and in here, the regional manager of the Ghana Water Company.
When was this?
This was in 2024, March.
Okay.
March 2024. His name here, Mr. Tiapa, he says the turbidity level of the Pra was at an all-time high. Normally, at that level, we need to shut down because of the challenges that have been associated with this. He makes the point here. He says, look, and he says, when they checked it on March 19, its levels were at levels that were all-time high. And ordinarily, they should even shut down the treatment plant. The documentary that Erastus Asaidonko conducted, the water levels were checked at the time. They were bad. But today, this is Ghana Water Company Limited, its regional manager, indicating that these levels are at an all-time high.
Okay, so 2 or 3 things. First, I do not suggest by any stretch of imagination or by any stretch of conclusion that the issues relating to illegal mining have been resolved conclusively. That has never been my position. That cannot be my position. That would be preposterous. It would be utopian to think that we can resolve the issues of illegal mining within this period of time. No, I haven't said that. And of course, I've told you what we have done and where we are, where I think we are, and where we are heading to. Number 2, as I said, you have to always hasten slowly when you are drawing conclusions on turbidity levels. I receive fortnightly reports on the turbidity levels of the river bodies of our country, and in some cases you will find that River Brim, the level is gone down. You will find that Pra is gone up a bit. You will find that Ankobra is gone down, and you find that Ofin is gone up a bit, or Ofin is actually escalated. The turbidity level is gone up astronomically. I mean, it's a yo-yo sort of thing. So you get the whole report, and then you sit around the table with your team. You sit around the table with the Ghana Armed Forces, the Minerals Commission, the Inspectorate Division. Then you ask the question, why is River Pra, for example, why is the turbidity level going up? You may find out that in that particular case, or in that particular instance, there is a surge of illegal mining in that area, or there's a surge of sham finds in that area. And then you devise measures to step in and flush the people out, or step in and deal with the situation. So, I mean, I'm very sure about what I'm saying. I know what I'm talking about. I mean, this is something I do literally every week, where they bring the turbidity levels of the river bodies of our country. And you find that in some cases, the level is dropped sharply. And I'll give you one final example. When the rains, for example, sets in, normally and naturally, the turbidity levels improve. It may not necessarily mean because your fight against illegal mining is making any headway. It's just probably the rains. And when the rains subside, you may find that the turbidity levels go down. It may not necessarily mean that there's a surge in illegal small-scale mining. So bottom line, we are not out of the woods yet. I will never come here to pretend that we're out of the woods. We still have a lot of work to do. There are a lot of challenges. But by and large, I believe that we've really made some considerable progress. And if for nothing at all, we've been able to exercise this culture of impunity. And we have a mechanism in place to respond to issues of illegal mining activities in our country, and we have to continue and do so relentlessly and do so without wavering whatsoever until we achieve our goals.
But someone just sent a message. Engineer Mahama says, please tell the minister that as long as I'm concerned as an engineer, vested with the knowledge and experience in the environment, the community mining, whether surface or underground, with no provision of tailing dam, will undermine the surface and underground water. Hence, as long as our water body is concerned, it's illegal to me. The tailings dams are supposed to entrap the residue forever. I've seen what they are calling community mining, and if it's not drastically improved, the value is the same.
What was his name, please?
Engineer Mahama.
Well, but what I would say to Engineer Mahama is this: that look, Engineer Mahama, we sat down around the table with crack experts, and when I became minister, in all modesty, there was no framework or model for community mining. The thing about community mining was just that a group of people in a community come together, and then they identify a concession, they get a license, and they go about mining. I sat down with a group of experts. I tasked them to come up with a model. For community mining. They worked through it, they crossed the T's, they dotted the I's, and they brought a complete model which said that we should have mercury-free gold catchers, which will be the gold catchers which will extract the gold from the ore, and which is very much in accord with the Minamata Convention on Mercury, and which means that we no longer are going to use mercury in extracting gold from the ore body of gold. So all, and then they will have to have a clinic, they have to have a gold room, they have to have a changing room. And as a matter of fact, the one I launched in Hinam and Cobra yesterday was a first-class community mining scheme with everything. In fact, they actually have a clinic or a first aid post, which the community even relies on for their healthcare needs. But look, I will take Engineer Mohammed's number before I leave you. I'll call him myself. And if he has any additional perspectives which will enrich what we are doing, we're very happy to listen to him.
On the same topic, Professor Ensua, who used to run CSIR, also messaged me and said, ask the minister if any environmental impact assessments are done before community mining starts. The effect on forests and rivers. I put it to him that community mining is glorified Galamsey. Tell him even if turbidity levels improve, arsenic, mercury and cyanide remain. Tell him without fixing those, no progress has been made.
Well, let me say to the professor that first of all, we do the community mining scheme. The whole concept of the community mining scheme is that you do not involve any of these chemicals in the process. That's absolutely important. If you had mercury, if you had cyanide being introduced in the operations of community mining scheme, then it defeats the purpose, it defeats the goals and everything we are trying to do. So the first cardinal characteristic of a community mining scheme is that no chemical is introduced. And that is why government took upon itself to import 200 mercury-free gold catches, which have been internationally sanctioned and acclaimed as the safest, environmentally sound way or process of extracting gold from the ore body and from the ore. And you will realize that even the recovery rate for these equipment is about 90% as opposed to 40% when they use the mercury. So the professor should be rest assured that we do not use any of these chemicals. It never comes up at all. And I want to very respectfully disagree with the professor vehemently that the community mining schemes we are launching are not glorified Galamsey schemes. They are proper community mining schemes, which I'll be very happy to make arrangement for him to visit 2 or 3 of them, to vet them, and he should come back and give me a report. If he comes back and tells me that, Mr. Minister, these your community mining schemes are glorified Galamseys, I'll take a second look at them.
Let's talk about the Achimota forest briefly. I mean, what's the status now? There's been lots of talk about revocation of EI 144. You had talked about, following the death of Sir John and his will, you said you're going to probe everything. What's happened?
Well, I think that Sir John 1 is with the special prosecutor. Let's leave it at that.
Okay.
The substantive matter, as you know, I got a team to review the entire process as a process which dates back from President Kufuor's time. And I believe you saw the statement I issued, which was a paragraph 48 paragraph statement which set out the history, the chronology and everything relating to Achimota forest, which predates my era as minister. In fact, in my time, not even an acre of land was added to it. But I got this committee to review it, which resulted in us reducing the acreage from 361 to 260 and saving the state a buffer zone of 100 acres. But even that, I mean, as I kept explaining from the very beginning, given the nature of the forest, the condition precedent we insisted on when we were promulgating the EI means that to be able to even take possession of a square meter of the land which has been released to the Owu family, you have to go through a laborious process which should satisfy state authorities that the existing forest reserve, its ecological integrity will not be compromised. And so as we speak today, not even a square meter of Achimota forest, the gazetted Achimota forest, which is being released to the Owu family, is being developed. Not a square meter. Is possession of a square meter is even been taken because of the very rigorous, extensive safeguard measures we put in place. You have to go through a whole process for us to be satisfied that whatever development you are going to have, which will adjourn the existing forest reserve, will not threaten the ecological integrity of the forest reserve, but will save the country 100 acres.
So today, the Owu family, if they decide to sell, so if they satisfy all that requirement, they can sell. And they can put up structures, whatever they want to do on the land.
If they do, but nobody's been able to do that yet, at least, I mean, up to date. I don't say I'm not.
But yes, but for many people, I mean, for the environmentalists, the call was a total revocation of the EI 144. Even the Ghana Institute of Planners had cause to complain and said, let's stop this.
Well, that's an issue of relitigating the whole matter. Yeah, because we've gone through it and we had a thorough scrutiny of the whole arrangement, which is an arrangement that I inherited, and I've been able to save. Not I mean the government has been able to save the country, or has been able to negotiate, or has been able to make an arrangement where we have a buffer of 100 acres. And on top of it, the government is able to put in place sufficient measures which will satisfy the environmentalists in terms of the ecological integrity of Achimota forest. It stays intact. The forest is there. Nothing is happening to it.
Similar situation at the Ramsar sites. Recently, the Minister Designate for the Greater Accra region was shocked at the level of development that he saw in some of the surrounding areas of the not surrounding, the buffer areas created around the Ramsar site. It seems that the actual protected area has been reduced, so that the areas that have been developed already can remain so, rather than reversing the damage.
Well, first of all, you will see that we have passed a new bill to regulate the wildlife sector of our country. We have a new wildlife bill which came into effect on 1st March this year. And this is a bill which had been on the before the cabinet and parliament since 2008. So it's been 15 years late. This wildlife bill. We had to take it up, dust it up, and literally just hold the bull by the horn and drag it through cabinet and drag it through parliament. We went through torture to be able to get this wildlife bill passed. And the wildlife legislative framework we had, legal framework we had before the passage of this new wildlife bill was nothing to write home about. It was not fit for purpose. It was a wildlife bill which did not consolidate the laws of our country, which was not in accord with international conventions, CITES, and many others, and which literally, with the greatest of respect, made Ghana laughable when it comes to wildlife and biodiversity conservation and specially designated areas like Ramsar sites and the rest. So yes, we've been able to put in place the legal framework which is now fit for purpose. Ramsar site, was established pre-independence and the rest, and it was essentially meant as a biodiversity conserved enclave. But then again, it's also the land administration of our country, where people build indiscriminately, planning of our country, where the land planning and town planning of our country is one that we cannot rely on. And you have a situation where people just build as they wish. They build in waterways, they build at Ramsar sites, they build in forest areas, and so myself and Accra Minister Henry Kote, we went there together. We've taken very, very, very drastic steps to try and safeguard the remaining site. And
what about those who have broken the law already?
Well, we've demolished a good number of structures there. You should know this. We've demolished a good number of structures. And when you demolish the structure, then you have the other flip side of the equation. Insensitive. We are not considering the needs of people. We've destroyed a considerable number of buildings there, and we've actually done a cordoning, a zoning, where those are no-go areas. If you have a structure there, we break it down. So we're taking action on this.
Okay. All right. Well, before you leave, I suppose you might have that one message that you want our listeners to take away from this. In the last 1 minute that we have, I'll give you the chance to.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Kojo and Winston, for the opportunity to have this conversation on the management and exploitation of the lands and natural resources of our country. And also to thank your viewers for being part of this, and the engineer and the professor for their insight. But also to say, look, the lands and natural resources of our country, by the dictates of our national constitution, remains the property of the Ghanaian people. I think it's absolutely important that we get that right. The president is just a trustee. The constitution is very clear. Public lands are vested in the president as a trustee. The mineral resources of our country are vested in the president as a trustee. So in the management and exploitation of these resources, we all have to be involved. And I've always taken the attitude that when people make suggestions or when people critique or when people make interventions, we should accept them in good faith and we should interrogate them. And it is through that all of us collectively we can, let me just conclude by saying, for example, the contractual framework for our mineral resources, for instance, is something that we all need to bring our heads together to get a model that works for our country. Not that works for MPP government or Abu Jinapor, but that works for our country. And the ministry's doors are open, and we are very happy to work with any and everybody in government, in civil society, in academia, experts, what have you, to ensure that when all is said and done, we have a land administration in this country which is fit for purpose and which can serve the developmental needs of the Ghanaian people and our state, that we manage the natural resources of our country which inures to the Ghanaian people who are the true owners of these resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. And of course that is Samuel Abu Jinapor. He is the he's the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. Thank you so much.